The left leg of the folding table clicks every time I touch my keyboard. Grant hears it. He keeps talking. Northline will see immediately that we've moved away from personality-based operations, he tells the visitors as he guides them past the time clock. We're building repeatable systems. My 2 monitors tremble on the bowed plastic tabletop. Behind me, 6 years of colored lines, magnetic tags, handwritten timings, and red clothespins cover nearly an entire wall. Grant gestures toward the glass-walled office 10 feet away. My old desk is inside it, facing out like an exhibit. We had some inefficient use of space, he says. That desk is better used elsewhere. Simone Park, Northline's operations buyer, doesn't look at the office. She looks at the wall behind me. Then she stops. The other visitors take 2 more steps before realizing she isn't with them. Grant turns, one hand still extended toward his new command center. Simone approaches my process map slowly. Her eyes move from the blue rote magnets to the orange wash formula cards, then to a red clothespin clipped beside Thursday's surgical center load. Who built this? Grant smiles at me as if we've rehearsed my answer. The table leg clicks under my palm. I did, I say. Simone touches nothing. Then why are you sitting out here? 6 months earlier, Grant Vail walked into Mercer Textile Services, carrying a leather portfolio and wearing shoes that had never crossed a wet laundry floor. They were good shoes, brown, narrow, expensive, without being loud. By 10:15 that morning, the right one had a pale streak of detergent slurry across the toe. He took it well. First casualty, he said, looking down at it. Darius Cole, our wash floor supervisor, leaned toward me and murmured, "Shoes still got a chance. Man inside it, jury's out." I bit the inside of my cheek. Grant looked up. "Something funny?" "Darius thinks we can save the leather." "Neutral cleaner," Darius said. "Soft cloth. Emotional support." Grant laughed. It was a real laugh, which annoyed me because I had already decided I didn't want to like him. My cousin Paige had called an all-hands meeting beside the clean linen staging area, the only place large enough to hold office staff, route managers, maintenance, and half the wash crew without shutting down production. Behind her, stacks of white banquet napkins moved along the finishing line in perfect little squares. Every 30 seconds, the air compressor coughed. Paige wore navy, as she always did when she wanted the room to remember she was president instead of the woman who still kept spare lip balm in my desk drawer. "Most of you know Grant," she said. Everyone knew who he was. Paige had married him the previous fall in a vineyard ceremony that involved 3 kinds of glassware and a speech from Aunt Celia that lasted 11 minutes. Grant had been working for a national food distributor then. He understood warehouses, transportation, labor planning, and how to say network optimization without blinking. A few people nodded. Darius crossed his arms. "Starting today," Paige continued, "Grant is our Vice President of Operational Performance." That title caused a small change in the air, not enough to call a reaction, but enough that Paige noticed. She tightened her grip on the clipboard in front of her. "We've had 2 difficult quarters. The new tunnel washer has increased our debt service, fuel costs are still unstable, and we've been absorbing too many customer accommodations without pricing them correctly. Grant is here to help us become disciplined." Grant stepped beside her. "I'm here to listen first," he said. "This company has survived 42 years because people in this room know what they're doing." Darius whispered, "Here comes the but. But experience has to become process. If the company can't measure how work gets done, it can't improve how work gets done." The compressor coughed again, right on cue. Grant smiled, "And apparently I'll need to learn when to pause." That got him another laugh. I watched Paige watching him. She looked relieved. For the first time since Aunt Celia's stroke, she was standing beside someone who seemed comfortable being looked to for answers. I understood the appeal. That didn't mean I trusted it. After the meeting, Grant asked me for a tour. "Paige says you're the person who knows how the pieces connect. She says that when something's late. What does she say when everything's on time? She doesn't call." He smiled and wrote something in his portfolio. I showed him the soil dock first. It was loud, humid, and honest. Carts came in from hospitals with sealed liners and numbered tags. Hotel linen arrived in canvas slings that always weighed more on rainy days. Restaurant goods smelled like fryer oil, wine, bleach, and whatever decisions had been made after midnight. Grant asked good questions. He wanted average cart weight, touch points, reject rates, and labor minutes by customer class. He noticed a scale that was 6 feet too far from the sorting station and a stack of unused bins occupying the best path to the elevator. Why are those there? Purchasing ordered the wrong size 2 years ago. Why do we still have them? Because throwing away a mistake makes it official. He looked at the bins, then at me. That sounded rehearsed. I've had 2 years. At the wash aisle, I explained the difference between the tunnel system and the smaller, open pocket machines. The tunnel handled volume efficiently, but it hated surprises. Isolation loads, heavily stained restaurant aprons, and certain surgical textiles needed separate formulas and more human judgment. Darius joined us beside washer 4. "This one drifts hot," he said. Grant looked at the digital display. It says 160. It says lots of things. Maintenance ticket. 3. Resolution? Darius pointed at himself. "I stand here and listen." Grant's expression sharpened. That's not a resolution. It was the right answer, and Darius knew it. He gave Grant a more careful look. We continued to the finishing floor where sheets rushed through the ironer beneath a rolling wave of heat. Grant removed his jacket. By the time we reached dispatch, he had rolled up his sleeves and stopped worrying about his shoes. That was the contradiction of him. He could enter a place overconfident and still pay attention once the place pushed back. Then he saw my wall. At that time, my desk sat inside a low gray cubicle near dispatch, with the process map covering the wall behind it. It had started as a strip of painter's tape during the worst month of the pandemic, when customer volumes changed by the hour and 3 supervisors quit within 2 weeks. Over the years, it had grown into a living diagram of the company. Blue lines were routes, green cards were customer delivery windows, orange cards were wash formulas, black magnets marked machines, red clothespins marked exceptions requiring a decision before the next handoff. Grant stood in front of it for almost a minute. "What software is this in?" "It isn't." "I mean the underlying workflow. You're looking at it." He glanced back at me. "All of it?" "The part that matters today." He pulled one of the red clothespins from the bottom edge. "Why clothespins?" "They're cheap, visible, and hard to click past." "What does this one mean?" The card beneath it read Briar Glen Tuesday. "They're renovating 2 floors. Their regular volume is down, but their banquet volume is unpredictable. If a red clip is up, dispatch has to confirm the event count before we lock Wednesday's route." "You call them?" "Email first. Then call if they haven't answered by 2. So the process depends on you remembering to do that. The process depends on whoever owns Tuesday exceptions. This week, that's me. Where is that assignment documented?" I pointed to the upper left corner where a narrow card showed names beside each weekday. Grant replaced the clothespin, slightly crooked. "You built this?" "I built the first version. Everybody's changed it." He studied the wall again, but the admiration I had expected never quite arrived. Instead, I saw calculation. "This is useful," he said, "but it's also a risk." "How?" "If I can't see the logic in a report, I can't know whether we have a process or a talented person compensating for the absence of one." It was close enough to something Aunt Celia used to say that I felt defensive before I could stop myself. Talented people are usually how processes get made, and then the process has to outgrow them. He said it mildly, almost kindly. That made it land harder. At lunch, I took my sandwich to Paige's office. She had 3 spreadsheets open and a cup of coffee she'd reheated enough times to give it the smell of burned toast. "You could have warned me," I said. "I did warn you. You said Grant might help with some operational projects." He is helping with operational projects. You gave him a title that sounds like a committee. Paige leaned back. Lena. Whenever she said my name that way, I could see us 10 years earlier, sitting on the floor of Aunt Celia's office assembling root binders because the printer had jammed and no one else knew how to collate them. Paige had worn old jeans then. She'd also asked before borrowing my stapler. What? I said. We need him. We need a maintenance budget. We need both. She turned one spreadsheet toward me. I recognized the debt schedule for the tunnel washer. The quarterly payment had looked ugly when we signed the contract. Now it looked predatory. How bad? I asked. We're not missing payroll. That wasn't my question. Paige rubbed the bridge of her nose. We lost the Marston Hotel Group. Natural gas was 12% over forecast, and St. Vincent's is rebidding next spring. If we want options, we have to look like a company someone would invest in. Someone? Northline has asked for preliminary numbers. That stopped me. Northline Hospitality Supply owned laundries in 5 states. They didn't buy distressed companies. They bought regional companies just before distress became visible. Does Aunt Celia know? Of course she knows. Does she know you hired your husband to prepare us for a sale? Paige's face changed. He was the most qualified person willing to walk into this situation. Those aren't the same thing. No, Lena, they're not. The most qualified person wanted a signing bonus we couldn't afford. I looked at the debt schedule again. Paige lowered her voice. I can't run the company like Aunt Celia did. I haven't asked you to. You don't have to. That one found its mark. Her phone buzzed. She turned it face down. I know what you've done here, she said. I know how many times you've saved us. I don't want to thank you. What do you want? I could have answered. A title that matched the decisions I made. Authority that didn't vanish the moment the crisis ended. Pay that didn't rely on overtime. I was too tired to keep working. A desk where Paige still occasionally left her lip balm because she assumed some parts of our lives belonged to both of us. Instead, I folded the corner of my sandwich wrapper. I want Grant to ask before he starts fixing things he doesn't understand. Paige sighed. Give him a chance. Grant spent his first month earning one. He sold the wrong-sized bins to a caterer for more than we had expected. He moved the soil dock scale, saving sorters hundreds of unnecessary steps per shift. He negotiated a better chemical contract and found that we were paying for 12 active handheld scanners when 3 had been broken in a cabinet since the previous winter. People started bringing him problems. Darius even stopped calling him dress shoes. Then Grant changed the route schedule. He used 6 months of driver data to identify 2 runs that could be combined. On paper, it saved 42 labor hours a week. I told him the routes overlapped only if he ignored the linen card exchange at Hawthorne Surgical. The driver waits an average of 9 minutes, he said, on ordinary days. We build schedules around averages. We build recovery around exceptions. He tapped the report. We can't staff for every unlikely event. Hawthorne releases used carts only after their facility's lead signs the seal log. If he's pulled into a compliance meeting, 9 minutes becomes 35. How often? 7 times last year, out of 260 service days. 6 of those were Thursdays. Thursday is when the combined route would have no recovery room. Grant looked toward my wall. A red clothespin marked Hawthorne's Thursday card. You clipped that after you saw my proposal? It's been clipped since their last audit. His jaw shifted just enough for me to notice. The next morning, the clothespin was sitting on my keyboard. Grant stood at the entrance to my cubicle with his leather portfolio under one arm. If your map is going to function as an operational tool, he said, changes need to be controlled. I picked up the clothespin. You removed an active exception. I'm asking you to show me the supporting data. You could have asked without taking it down, and you could have raised the issue without turning the wall into an argument. For a second, neither of us moved. Route radios crackled behind him. Somewhere on the floor, a cart hit a doorframe with a hollow boom. Then Grant nodded toward the clothespin between my fingers. "Prove Thursday is different," he said. It was the first time he asked me for proof. It was also the first time I understood he planned to use anything I couldn't prove against me. So I proved it. I pulled Hawthorne's seal logs, our vehicle location reports, and a year of route sheets. The delays weren't evenly scattered. 5 of the 7 had happened between 11:30 and 12:15 on Thursdays, when Hawthorne held its internal compliance review and its facilities lead was most likely to be unavailable. The combined route would reach them at 11:40. Grant read everything twice. "This could have been in the original proposal," he said. "You asked for average cart time. I asked whether the routes could be combined. Those are different questions." He set the reports on his desk in a neat stack, only if the person answering wants them to be. I felt my shoulders rise. What's that supposed to mean? It means you knew something relevant and waited for me to step on it. I told you in the meeting. You gave me a story about 7 bad Thursdays. I gave you the reason your schedule wouldn't work. And now you've given me evidence. He slid the stack back to me. "We'll keep a 30-minute buffer on Thursday. The routes combine Monday through Wednesday. Friday stays unchanged until we get another month of data." It was a better answer than I expected, which left me with nowhere satisfying to put my anger. Grant leaned back. "You were right. You sound disappointed." "I'm disappointed it took conflict to get documentation. And I'm disappointed you took something off my wall to make a point." He considered that. "Fair," he said. The Monday through Wednesday combination worked. Grant had been right about the wasted overlap and the drivers preferred finishing earlier. The Thursday buffer paid for itself 2 weeks later when Hawthorne's facilities lead got trapped in a meeting and our driver waited 31 minutes for the sealed carts. At 1:20, Grant appeared beside my desk with his phone in his hand. "Your red clip just saved the restaurant route. It saved your combined route. That too." He put the phone away. "I'm adding the Hawthorne exception to the new planning platform. Make sure it's tied to day of week, not customer." "I do listen, Lena. When it's documented." His mouth twitched. "I'm learning your language. I wanted that to feel like progress. For a while, it did." Grant's new platform was called Relay, a name that made everyone on the wash floor think of electrical parts. It pulled route schedules, machine availability, customer volumes, and labor forecasts into one dashboard. When it worked, it was useful. A route manager could see that the tunnel washer was running behind without walking across the building. Purchasing could see projected chemical demand before somebody was down to the last drum. When it didn't work, it failed with confidence. Relay knew a cart held 400 pounds. It didn't know damp hotel linen weighed more after 3 days of rain. It knew Washer 4 existed. It didn't know Darius could hear the drive belt slipping before the sensor detected anything. It treated 10 restaurant bags as equivalent to 10 hotel bags because no one had taught it the difference between fryer oil and pillowcases. Grant asked me to help teach it. For 6 weeks, I worked with him almost every afternoon. We argued about language. He wanted categories. I wanted conditions. He wanted a field labeled delay reason. I wanted separate fields for where the delay started and where it became visible. "Now you're just trying to make the form ugly," he said. "The work is ugly. Forms don't have to be." That's the nicest thing anyone has ever said about forms. He laughed, then gave me both fields. Those afternoons were the most dangerous part of working with Grant because they showed me the version of him Paige had trusted. He learned fast. He didn't pretend to know the floor when he didn't. If a route attendant corrected him, he wrote it down. Twice I caught him carrying wet bags and expensive shirts because he had been standing nearby when someone needed a hand. Then, the moment a useful process became visible, he acted as if visibility had created it. At the first monthly performance review, Grant projected Relay's dashboard on the conference room wall. Paige sat at the head of the table. Finance, sales, maintenance, and customer service had seats. I had supplied most of the operational exceptions but had not been invited. I found out about the meeting because Tasha Reed, one of the dispatchers, called me from the hallway. They're asking why the Manor House recovery time improved, she whispered. Because we split their stained banquet linen into a separate reclaim batch instead of holding the whole load. I said that. What did Grant say? That relay identified a batching opportunity. I looked at my wall. The orange formula card for Manor House still had Darius's handwriting on it. Did Relay climb into the reclaim washer and separate the napkins? I asked almost exactly that. Tasha. I said, physically identify. Yummy, very professional. I told her to go back before Grant noticed she was gone. He noticed anyway. After the meeting, he came to my desk and closed the little swinging cubicle gate behind him. The gate had no latch and immediately drifted open again. If you have concerns about attribution, he said, bring them to me. I didn't bring anything to anyone. Tasha challenged me in front of the department leads. Tasha has never required help challenging anybody. That's true. He pushed the gate closed. It drifted open. But you gave her the language. She asked why recovery improved. I told her. She called the system a fancy weather forecast. That sounds like Tasha. Then she said, you're the person looking out the window. I tried not to smile. Grant's face softened for half a second. It was a good line. It was. It was also undermining. That word removed the humor from the cubicle. Darius changed the batch sequence, I said. Tasha adjusted the route. I changed the customer promise. Relay recorded the result. If you say the dashboard found the opportunity, people know you're skipping the part where they did the work. We're trying to build confidence in a new system. You don't build confidence by lying about what it does. I didn't lie. You made the sentence smoother than the truth. He stared at me through the open gate. My job, he said, is to make this company legible to people who aren't standing in this building. And my job is to keep those people from selling what the building can't do. No, your job is scheduling coordination. He said it quietly. That made it impossible to pretend he had misspoken. The title had been inaccurate for years, but Aunt Celia's promises and Paige's dependence had let me treat it as temporary. Hearing Grant use it as a boundary made me feel foolish for every emergency in which I had worked beyond it. Then maybe scheduling coordination is all I should do, I said. That isn't what I'm asking. It sounded exact. I'm asking you to support the structure we're putting in place. The cubicle gate drifted open again. Grant looked at it, irritated, and this time left it that way. Paige came to my apartment that Sunday with Thai food and a bottle of white wine. She put both on the kitchen counter and began opening cabinets as if she still lived there. Glasses are where they've always been, I said. I was looking for plates. You open the cabinet above the refrigerator. I'm under pressure. That's where I keep the pressure plates. She found the dishes and gave me a tired smile. For 10 minutes, we talked about nothing important. The restaurant had forgotten the spring rolls. Paige's neighbor had bought a motorcycle and apparently intended to repair it only after midnight. The wine was too cold. Then she said, Grant thinks you're encouraging people to distrust Relay. I set down my fork. Did Grant tell you I spent 60 hours helping configure it? He did. Did he tell you he used Darius's batching change in a presentation without naming Darius? He was presenting system improvements, not handing out awards. It mattered to the people in the room. Everything matters to someone in the room. There she was, the president, arriving 3 bites into dinner. Why are you here, Paige? Because I don't want this to turn ugly. Which part? You and Grant circling each other, the staff taking sides, every disagreement becoming family news before I get home. I haven't discussed him with Aunt Celia. I didn't mean her. You mean the laundry is family. Paige tore a piece of basil in half with her thumbnail. Northline requested more information, she said. They want a tour in the fall if the next quarter holds. So this is happening. It might. And Grant? What about him? What does he get if it happens? Her eyes lifted to mine. He has an integration incentive in his contract. How much? That's not your business. I'm building the operational record he'll use to earn it. You are being paid for your work at a scheduling coordinator's rate. I knew we'd get here. We got here years ago. You just kept driving. Paige pushed her plate away. Aunt Celia made promises she couldn't afford. She could afford to change my title. She was trying to keep you. The kitchen went very still. Paige looked down at the torn basil leaf. What does that mean? I asked. She thought if she gave you an operations title, you'd use it to get hired somewhere bigger. She told you that? She told me everything when I took over. Aunt Celia had promised me director-level authority after I rebuilt the medical linen process. She had said we needed to wait until the next budget year, then the next customer renewal, then until Paige was settled as president. I had taken each delay as evidence that the promotion mattered enough to do properly. Paige reached for her wine. I shouldn't have said it that way. Is there a better way? She trusted you. She depended on you. She kept me undertitled because she was afraid I'd leave. She was afraid everyone would leave. It was the kindest possible explanation, and it made me angrier than cruelty would have. Paige left the leftovers. I threw them away after she was gone because the smell of basil had turned sour. On Monday, I began making copies. I didn't take confidential files home or forward myself customer data. I created a clean record inside the company system. Exception decisions, rejected recommendations, customer changes, machine constraints, and the names of the people responsible for each improvement. If Darius changed a formula, the change record said Darius. If Tasha rebuilt a route, it said Tasha. When Grant verbally changed a priority, I sent a short email confirming what would move and which promise would be affected. At first, he answered with approved or proceed. Then he called me into his office. You sent me 9 confirmation emails yesterday. There were 9 priority changes. You don't normally require written approval for all of them. You said experience had to become process. This isn't process. It's insulation. From what? He leaned forward. That depends. What are you expecting to happen? I held his gaze. I'm expecting someone to ask why a load was late. He studied me long enough that I could see him changing tactics. Starting next week, Tasha and Miguel will report directly to route operations, he said. You'll focus on system maintenance and load planning. They're dispatchers. They're also employees, not extensions of your desk. Who's running live exceptions? Route operations. Which person? We'll rotate ownership. The weekday assignment already rotates. On your wall. In the operation. Grant closed his portfolio. This is exactly the dependency we need to remove. The following Friday, Tasha and Miguel moved to the route office. By Wednesday, managers had missed 4 minor exceptions and 1 that wasn't minor. A boutique hotel changed its conference count after cutoff, and the update sat in relay under customer note, while their linen moved through the ordinary sequence. At 4:10, Tasha called from the loading dock. The Fairmont house truck is 18 carts short. I was already looking at the red clothespin clipped beside their card. They added 180 covers. Nobody flagged it. I flagged it Monday. Grant says the note didn't change projected volume. It doesn't unless route operations approves it. Route operations thought customer service owned it. We had 50 minutes before the truck's departure window. Darius split the missing table linen into 2 open pocket machines. Miguel swapped the final 2 stops on the route. I called Fairmont House and negotiated a staggered delivery. Dining linen first, guest room backup stock on a second van. At 5:14, the first truck left with all 18 carts. Grant watched it pull out, then looked at the red clothespin in my hand. You knew this would fail, he said. I knew it could. And you let the new ownership structure run. You reassigned the people who used to catch it. You could have intervened sooner. I entered the exception Monday, on the wall, and in relay. His expression changed. He checked his phone, found the note, and saw my timestamp beneath it. The next morning, 2 maintenance workers were measuring my cubicle. What's going on? I asked. One of them glanced toward Grant's office. Grant came out carrying a roll of blue painter's tape. "We need this area enclosed for the North Line preparation team," he said. "The desk is better used elsewhere." He marked a rectangle beside the time clock window. "Your monitors can go here." I looked at the rectangle. There's no desk there. We have a folding table in storage. Tasha, standing across dispatch, stopped writing. Grant noticed. He lowered his voice. "It's temporary." I picked up the red clothespin I had left beside my keyboard. "Put that in writing," I said. Grant wrote it. "Temporary relocation pending completion of the North Line preparation area." He sent the email at 8:12. At 8:19, Lou from maintenance carried in a 6-foot folding table with gray plastic legs and a shallow dip in the middle. "Best one we had," Lou said. "That sentence concerns me. The other one has somebody's birthday in permanent marker." "Whose?" "Craig." "We don't have a Craig." "Exactly." Lou unfolded the legs and pressed down on the top. The table rocked. He folded a square of cardboard and wedged it under the left foot. "Executive upgrade," he said. He was trying to make it funny because Tasha was watching from the root office and Grant's door was open. I appreciated the effort enough to smile. My monitors went beside the time clock window. My file drawers went into storage. The gray cubicle walls came down, but the process map remained because removing it required peeling up years of tape and relocating 2 mounted whiteboards. By noon, everyone who started or ended a shift had walked past me. Some looked away. Some offered help I didn't need. One route attendant set a wrapped peppermint on my keyboard as if I had suffered a death. Darius came by after lunch, pressed both palms to the tabletop, and frowned at the click. "I could cut you a shim." Lou gave me cardboard. Cardboard absorbs moisture. So do I. He looked through the new opening where my cubicle had been. Grant was standing inside it with a contractor discussing glass panels. "This isn't temporary." "The email says it is. The email says temporary relocation. Doesn't say the table is temporary. That's why you're management. I'm supervision. Management gets lumbar support." He left and returned with a thin piece of black rubber. He crouched, replaced Lou's cardboard wedge, and rocked the table until it steadied. "Don't say I never gave you anything." "You've given me machine noise in my dreams." That was free. For 3 days, the table held. On the 4th, Grant placed a banker's box beside my chair. "Personnel sent your role description." I didn't ask for it. I did. The job description was 2 pages long. Scheduling coordinator appeared in bold at the top. The duties included maintaining planning systems, preparing load projections, and supporting route operations. It did not include approving recovery actions, changing production priorities, negotiating customer windows, or directing cross-department responses. For years, those omissions had given Paige room to use me however she needed. Grant had turned them into a fence. "I want you working within a defined role," he said. "Then who has authority over exceptions that cross roles?" "The relevant department leads. And when they disagree, I do." "What if you're unavailable?" "I'm rarely unavailable." That was true. Grant answered emails at dawn and carried his phone onto the wash floor. His endurance was real. So was his belief that being reachable made him the correct person to reach. He tapped the job description. "This protects you, too. From making decisions. From being held responsible for decisions you aren't authorized to make." I looked past him at the glass panels being fitted around my old desk. Has that been a problem? It could become one. There it was. Not a threat he could be accused of making, just the outline of one. I signed only the acknowledgement that I had received the description. In the blank beneath my signature, I wrote, "Current operational duties exceed listed authority. Clarification requested." Grant read it. "You don't make anything easy." Easy isn't one of the listed duties. He almost smiled, then he carried the box away. The loss of overtime came next. Grant announced that system maintenance had to fit within normal working hours. I had been using early mornings to reconcile previous day exceptions before the first route meeting. When I stopped, the meeting began with yesterday's loose ends. Grant told me to delegate. I reminded him he had reassigned both dispatchers. He created a rotating reconciliation duty among route operations. Miguel did it well. Another coordinator approved every open item just to clear the screen. Tasha sent 2 back to Grant with comments longer than the original exceptions. The work continued, slower and more visible. My paycheck shrank enough that I canceled a weekend trip I had been planning with friends. I told them the acquisition schedule had changed. It was easier than saying my cousin's husband had discovered how much of my income depended on staying late to repair the company. Paige stopped dropping by my apartment. At work, she used the new glass office for meetings with Grant. I could see them through the wall behind the desk that had once held my paper clips, my root binders, and her lip balm. Grant installed a large monitor and mounted Relay's dashboard where my calendar had been. One afternoon, Aunt Celia came in for a financial review. She walked with a cane now, mostly for balance, and refused every hand offered to her. Her silver hair was clipped close at the back. She crossed dispatch slowly, taking in the glass walls, the route office, and finally my folding table. She rested both hands on the cane. "This yours?" Apparently. That single sound contained 42 years of vendor disputes. Grant came out of the office. "Celia, we've made the planning function more accessible to the floor. You put Lena by the clock. It's a temporary workstation." Aunt Celia looked at me. "You agree to that?" I acknowledged receipt. Her mouth moved at one corner. Grant offered her the conference room. She told him she knew where it was. Later, I found her studying the process map. "You kept the clothespins," she said. "They survived digitization. I stole the first pack from my own clothesline. You told me they came from office supply. I was trying to look professional." She touched the edge of the Hawthorne card. I wanted to ask why she had kept my title small. The question felt too large for the hallway and too old for the moment, but I asked anyway. "Did you think I'd leave if you promoted me?" Her hand dropped. "Paige told you. She said you were trying to keep me." Aunt Celia took her time answering. "I was afraid you'd see what you were worth somewhere else." "You could have shown me here." "Yes." The word came without defense. That made it worse for a moment, then better in a way I didn't want to reward. "You let me believe we were waiting for the right time. I kept thinking there would be one. You found time to make Paige president. She owned the risk. I carried plenty. I know. Knowing isn't a pension. No." A cart rolled past us, pushed by Miguel. He nodded to Aunt Celia and wisely kept going. She looked toward Paige's office. "I taught her that keeping the doors open excuses too much. You kept the doors open, and it cost people things I couldn't put back." I waited for her to tell me what to do. She had built her authority by speaking before other people discovered they were uncertain. Instead, she lifted one shoulder. "I'm sorry, Lena. It was late, incomplete, and real." I clipped the Hawthorne card more securely to the line. "Northline's coming in 5 weeks," I said. "I know." "Paige wants the sale. She wants to stop waking up afraid of the bank." "And Grant?" "Grant wants to prove he can turn a family company into a professional one. What do you want?" Aunt Celia looked around at the heat-blurred windows, the white carts, and the drivers crossing dispatch with scanners in their hands. "I want the truth to survive the presentation." She left me with that. 2 weeks later, Grant canceled our overflow agreement with Tidewater Linen. Tidewater was smaller and 30 miles west. Their equipment was older, but they kept 2 open pocket washers, underused on purpose. We paid a monthly retainer for emergency capacity, then a per-pound rate whenever we sent work. In 4 years, we had used them 11 times. Grant's spreadsheet showed the retainer as wasted money. "We've invested in internal capacity," he said at the operations meeting. "We can't keep paying competitors for hypothetical emergencies." "Our tunnel availability is 93%, Darius said, which is above industry threshold. It's below 100. Everything is. I pointed to the maintenance forecast. The main steam valve is still due for replacement next quarter. Northline's tour is this quarter. Grant's eyes met mine. You think we should shape operating expenses around a tour? I think we should avoid shaping them around it. Paige sat at the end of the table, silent. Grant folded his hands. Tidewater's retainer annualizes to almost the cost of a full-time route attendant. We can reinstate it if the risk changes. The risk changes when something breaks, I said. That's when they may not have capacity to sell us. We have 5 open pocket machines. 4 reliable ones, Darius said. Grant looked at him. Then fix the 5th. Darius leaned back. Should have put that in the maintenance tickets. Paige finally spoke. Cancel the retainer. Keep the relationship warm. Grant nodded once. The decision belonged to Paige, but he looked at me when he wrote it down. 6 days later, the tunnel's main steam valve began sticking. It didn't fail. It opened slowly, which was more expensive. Every batch took an extra 3 minutes to reach temperature. Across a full shift, 3 minutes multiplied into hours. Relay showed a yellow delay. My wall showed 3 red clothespins before noon. One belonged to a Hawthorne isolation load. At 2:30, I found Darius beside the control panel with Grant. The tunnel doors were closed. Through the small round window, wet linen turned in a slow, heavy fold. If we shorten cool down by 4 minutes, we recover the route, Grant said. Maybe, Darius answered. The formula allows a range. The range assumes the valve behaves. The temperature curve is still compliant. Darius saw me. Grant followed his eyes. Lena, we're handling it. What load? Hawthorne. I looked at the control sheet clipped beside the panel. A red clothespin held the isolation card to it. The release procedure requires full cool down after a temperature variance. Grant's jaw tightened. The variance is ramp time, not wash temperature. The procedure doesn't separate them. You wrote the procedure. Quality approved it. And quality isn't here. Then the load waits. We miss Hawthorne's delivery. Then we tell them why. Grant stepped closer, keeping his voice below the machinery. You've been waiting for a moment like this. Darius turned from the panel. Careful. Grant ignored him. You document every disagreement, mark every possible exception, and stand back until someone has to choose. Then you get to be right without being responsible for the cost. My face went hot. You reassigned the responsibility, and you've made sure we feel the absence. Yes, I said. The word surprised all 3 of us. I unclipped the isolation card, carried it to the quality station, and entered a formal hold under the procedure Grant had approved during relay configuration. Darius signed beneath me. The load left 47 minutes late. Hawthorne accepted the explanation and waived the service penalty because we had notified them before their receiving shift changed. The next morning, Grant sent me a written directive to remove the wall map before Northline's tour. I replied, Please confirm that the current exception map is obsolete and identify the replacement control. He did not answer. At 4 that afternoon, he came to my folding table. Take it down, Lena. As soon as you confirm in writing that relay replaces it, you know it doesn't fully replace it yet. Then the map is current. It gives the impression that our systems depend on manual workarounds. They do. He glanced toward the time clock. Tasha was close enough to hear. Grant lowered his voice. Do you care whether this sale happens? I care what we sell. For a moment, something tired showed in his face. If Northline walks, he said, there may not be enough goodwill left for everyone to keep making principled stands. Then he returned to the glass office. The map stayed. On the morning of the tour, I found a new red clothespin clipped to Thursday's capacity line. Beneath it, in Darius's square handwriting, were 4 words. Steam valve drifting again. I read it twice, then checked the live tunnel data. The valve was adding just under 2 minutes per batch. Not yet enough to turn relay yellow, enough to make Thursday's schedule a lie by lunchtime. I entered the drift in the maintenance log, attached the last 3 temperature curves, and placed the red clothespin back on the capacity line. Then I sent Grant a confirmation email. He appeared 3 minutes later. Northline will be here in 45 minutes. I know. You added a new exception to the wall. Darius found a new exception in the tunnel. Maintenance says the valve is functioning. Slowly. How slowly? Relay will show yellow around 12:30. The tour ends at noon. I looked at him. Grant rubbed his jaw. That came out wrong. It came out exact. He glanced at the map. Every card was straight. Every clip marked something active and documented. He reached toward the one Darius had added, then stopped before touching it. Can we recover internally? If nothing else changes. That isn't an answer. It's the answer capacity gives you. He lowered his hand. His tie was dark blue, and he had polished the same brown shoes he wore on his first day. Through the glass behind him, Paige was arranging Northline packets on my old desk. Please keep your responses concise, he said. If they ask me anything, they may. He walked away. Darius called from the floor at 9:15. Valves holding. Good. Good until it isn't. Very uplifting. I save morale for second shift. At 9:30, a black SUV pulled into the visitor spaces. Grant and Paige met the Northline group at reception. Simone Park came in first, carrying a slim notebook. She wore a charcoal jacket over a green blouse and shoes with thick soles appropriate for wet concrete. I liked her shoes immediately. Grant began with the conference room, then led them through customer service and purchasing. His voice carried whenever the route office door opened. He was good at this part. He knew the numbers and the places where our numbers had improved because of him. Chemical cost per pound was down. Over time had fallen. 3 routes had been consolidated without reducing scheduled stops. He gave credit to Miguel for helping redesign the restaurant sequence. I wondered whether that had cost him anything. The group crossed the soil dock in safety glasses and bright visitor vests. I watched through the dispatch window as Darius showed them the tunnel controls. Simone asked enough questions that Grant's planned 15 minutes became 28. At 11:20, they came through dispatch. The left leg of the folding table had begun clicking again. Darius's rubber shim was wearing thin, and I hadn't wanted to crawl under the table in front of visitors to adjust it. Grant guided Northline past the time clock and spoke about moving away from personality-based operations. He showed them Relay on the large monitor inside the glass office. He described my old desk as better used elsewhere. Simone looked at the wall behind me. Then she stopped. She studied the blue route lines, the orange wash cards, and the black machine magnets. Her attention settled on the red clothespins. Who built this? I did. She asked why I was sitting at the folding table. Grant answered before I could. We're reorganizing the planning area. Lena's workstation is temporary. Simone looked at the shallow bend between my monitors. How temporary? Pending completion of the preparation area. That's the preparation area? She pointed toward the glass office. Yes. And the map stayed here. It's a legacy visual aid. We're migrating the relevant functions into Relay. Simone stepped closer to the wall. One of Northline's finance people shifted impatiently, but she ignored him. Her eyes moved along Thursday's line. I've seen these colors, she said. Grant glanced at the map. They're standard categories. Not these. The recovery reports you sent us use red markers for pre-release interventions. She turned to me. Are these the events behind those reports? Some of them. What does this clip mean? Steam valve response is drifting. The tunnel is adding a little under 2 minutes per batch. Grant spoke smoothly. Maintenance has confirmed the equipment is operational. Simone looked at him. Is the map wrong? He paused. No, it shows a developing condition. She returned to the line. What happens if it develops? The tunnel falls behind, I said. How far? That depends on when the valve crosses 3 minutes, what's in the wash sequence, and whether the open pocket machines have room. Do they? Right now? And at 1 o'clock? I pointed to 2 orange cards farther down the line. Those machines are scheduled for Restaurant Reclaim and Hawthorne's isolation loads. What's the backup? I looked at Grant. He answered. We maintain internal redundancy across 5 open pocket machines. 4 reliable ones, Darius said from the back of the group. Grant turned. Darius had taken off his visitor vest and was holding a temperature sheet. He offered it to Simone. "Washer 4 drifts hot," he said. "We use it, but I wouldn't call it redundancy for medical work." Simone read the sheet. External overflow? Grant's shoulders went very still. "We recently ended a low-use retainer to improve cost efficiency." "With whom?" "Tidewater Linen." "Can you call them if the valve fails today?" "We can call." That wasn't my question. The table clicked under my hand. Simone looked at the clothespin marking Hawthorne. "This one appears several times in your service history. Hawthorne Surgical has a Thursday seal log delay," I said. "Relay accounts for it," Grant said. "It does now," I said. He gave me a warning look. Simone saw it. "How did it account for it before?" "It didn't," I said. "The route combination used average wait time. The map held the weekday exception until we added the supporting condition." "Who caught that?" "I did." "Who changed the route model?" "Grant." That surprised him enough to loosen his face. I showed Simone the weekday ownership card in the upper left corner. She asked how exceptions moved from the wall into Relay, who approved them, and what happened when customer notes did not change projected volume. Tasha answered that one from the route office. "They wait for route operations approval." "And before the reporting change?" "Dispatch caught them live." "Who is dispatch?" "Miguel and me." "Who owns live exceptions now?" Tasha glanced at Grant. "It rotates." "Where is the rotation?" "In Relay," Grant said. "Where is today's owner?" He opened the dashboard on my monitor. The owner field showed route operations. Simone leaned closer. "That's a department." "Yes," I said. She straightened. "Who is the person?" Nobody answered. The finance man near the door checked his watch again. Simone closed her notebook. "I want to see the last 90 days of manual exceptions matched against system events, priority approvals, maintenance conditions, and customer recoveries." Grant said, "We can prepare a summary. I'd prefer the underlying records. They're in different systems." "They're on that wall," she said. For the first time all morning, Grant had nothing ready. Paige stepped forward. "Lena has maintained a parallel exception record during the transition." Simone looked at Paige, then at me. "Can you walk us through it?" Grant began to speak. Paige cut him off. "Yes," she said. "She can." We spent another hour in dispatch. Simone chose 4 red clips, not the ones that made me look best. One was Grant's successful Hawthorne route adjustment. One was the Fairmont House conference change that route operations had missed. One was a chemical delivery delay Miguel had solved without involving me. The last was the isolation load I had held after the steam valve variance. For each one, we pulled the record, found the original signal, traced the decision, and identified who carried the consequence. The pattern was not that Mercer depended on me alone. It was that our process depended on people noticing things, naming them accurately, and having enough authority to act before the dashboard caught up. Relay had made those actions easier to analyze. Grant deserved credit for that. His reorganization had made some of them harder to take. He deserved that too. By the time Northline left, the tunnel was 27 minutes behind. Darius had shifted Restaurant Reclaim to Washer 3, and Miguel had moved a hotel stop without jeopardizing Hawthorne. The schedule recovered by 3:15. At 3:30, Simone emailed Paige. Northline was postponing its final offer pending an operational risk review. Grant closed the glass office door so hard the wall shook. I was packing my bag when Paige asked me to come inside. Grant stood behind my old desk. Paige sat in one of the visitor chairs, still wearing her Northline badge. "You blindsided us," Grant said. "I answered questions. You staged the entire thing." I set my bag down. I documented a valve problem. "You left that map up, knowing exactly how it would look. I asked you to identify the replacement control, because you knew I couldn't. Then why did you ask me to remove it?" "To keep a transitional tool from defining the company." "It does define the company. The transition is real." So are the gaps. Grant placed both hands on the desk. Northline could reduce the offer. They could walk. People here could lose jobs because you needed to prove I disrespected you. Paige flinched at the word disrespected, as if she had hoped the table could remain furniture. I looked at her. You watched him put me by the time clock. This is about the sale, Grant said. It became about the sale when you made my work presentable, but made me disposable. I never said you were disposable. You wrote my job description small enough to make it true. Paige removed her badge and laid it on the desk. Grant, give us a minute. He stared at her. This is my operational review. This is my company's acquisition. He picked up his portfolio and walked out. Through the glass, I watched him pass the folding table without looking at it. Paige waited until the root office door closed behind him. You could have told me the map and relay were that far apart. I did. Fairmont House showed you. The steam valve showed you. The overflow meeting showed you. You told me in arguments. That doesn't make it less true. She pressed her fingertips to her forehead. If Northline cuts the valuation, Aunt Celia loses part of her retirement distribution. I lose most of my equity cushion. Grant loses his integration incentive. I know. Do you? Yes, Paige. That's why I kept the workflow alive after you made it clear I was expected to do that without authority. She looked through the glass at the wall. What do you want? This time, I answered. I want written authority over process and customer continuity. I want the title and salary that go with it. I want Darius, Tasha, Miguel, and anyone else who raises a documented safety or capacity concern protected from retaliation. I want department ownership in Relay assigned to actual people. And I want access to any meeting where Mercer's operating capability is being represented to a buyer. Paige gave a short, exhausted laugh. You came prepared. I've been preparing since Grant put a clothespin on my keyboard. And if I say no, I'll organize the records, train whoever you choose, and leave after a reasonable handoff. You'd leave now? I should have left when Aunt Celia first taught me that being needed and being valued were different things. Paige looked down at her badge. I don't know if I can fix what she did. You can stop using it. Northline's review lasted 7 weeks. Simone interviewed supervisors without Grant in the room. She matched my exception records against relay, maintenance tickets, route scans, and customer credits. The records supported one another often enough to be useful and contradicted one another often enough to be expensive. Northline did not walk. It lowered its offer and required Mercer to reinstate external overflow capacity, replace the steam valve before integration, and establish a formal process control function. Paige signed my authority agreement 2 days before the revised offer. My new title was Director of Process and Customer Continuity. The salary increase did not repay the years behind it, but it changed what the next year would cost me. The agreement named department leads as decision owners and protected documented safety and service escalations. Grant kept his job. His route consolidations, purchasing changes, and reporting work had created real savings, and Northline wanted him on the integration team. They did not put him in charge of operations. His incentive had been tied to valuation and a clean transition. The reduced offer cut it sharply. He moved into systems integration under a Northline director who required written assumptions on every capacity model. Paige told me that last part with a straight face. I managed not to enjoy it until she left. The glass office became a shared planning room. My old desk stayed inside, but I chose a smaller workstation facing the floor. The process map moved to the longest wall where Darius could reach it without walking through anyone's office. We kept the folding table. Lou offered to put it back in storage, but Tasha said Craig might need it. Darius replaced the worn rubber shim, and we used the table for weekly exception reviews. Relay stayed open on a monitor beside the physical map. If they disagreed, the meeting continued until we knew why. At the first review after the sale, Grant arrived with a capacity report under his arm. He stopped at the table, perhaps remembering the day he had ordered Lou to place it beside the clock. I clipped the Hawthorne load card to Thursday's line with the same red clothespin that had once waited on my keyboard. The table leg held firm. I took my seat, looked at Grant, and opened the report. "Let's start with the capacity numbers," I said.